So back to code behavior section, and the first thing first, what I want to do is that I want to fire up W3 school right now. So it's really good to keep in track of where am I going. W3 school, okay, W3 school. Alright, so I just want to fire up this school right now. Okay, I have the offline version, which is not really the latest, but yet it is useful for me. And let's go to JavaScript tutorial, and let's really look at all this from right now. So if you look at all these, I've talked about this. I've really talked about this. I've talked about the gates, the sets. There, I feel bad if there is any one of these I've not talked about, and I'm really very sure that I've talked about a lot of them, and some of them that you need to use. I've talked about the leads. I've not talked about the arrow function, the classes. Then these are just the debugging and some kind of, this is not part of the tutorial. It's really good to check and look into it, but it's just some kind of a prerequisite for you to look through. So which means that you have automatically, or let me say 90%, finish your first level of introduction to JavaScript, even if you have not even actually do more than that, because we've talked about objects and prototypes too. So I've not talked about the constructors, and that's when things actually get really handy when we talk about constructors. I'm coming there for sec, and I've not actually talked about functions in real world. We've just been using function. I've not talked about the parameter, the invocation, the call, the apply, and the closure. Let's leave that. So let's really get things out. So we've talked about a lot of DOM already. We've talked about the node lists and the collections. So the collections like this. So we've talked about and this, the collection is actually really based on the element by tags names that we've talked about. So we just really need to we've talked about the nodes itself. So how you can append child elements. So which means that I really have objects to talk about. Objects talk about, then a JavaScript function. So we talk about a little of form API. Then before we do that, let's just go ahead and dive right into the things we haven't touched yet. So what are the things we haven't touched yet right here? So if I could go up, so I feel good that we've touched this, but I see something else in ex6, and those are the things like arrow function, class, and that's the two that we have not really talked about. So let's just go ahead and do that right now. So I'm going to close this up. Where am I? Document, code giver, JavaScript. So let's create a folder. So let's just talk about the arrow function. So I'm just going to name it the arrow function like that. So we open it with atom, so I can close the formal atom page up. Okay, all right, we don't see you, thank you. So we need to have our index.html, so this is good. And let's just go ahead and wrap HTML inside of it like that. Then we can say arrow arrow function in JavaScript like that. So this is really very important for us. In this case, I'll just have an external JavaScript. So inside it, I need to have the script that we need to run. So we really need to do it rightly. Why do I have to do that, for God's sake? So let's rename this guy now. We obviously know it's going to be script.js, not just anything. Then let's link up. So it's the link I use, no, that's bad. This is not Java, so CSS. So let's do some scripts, and we need to define the source. Oh my god, the source of the script, src there. So JavaScript plus scripts dot js, and that's where we are. All right, good. So the right before time, let's just create some unload here. The unload. Let's talk to the browser console, please. I prefer the browser console now. That's fun. So right before time, we have to type of function which is called the regular function, which I've been using with you before. And the syntax for the regular function is the function, then followed by the name, the curly braces, then followed by this. So these are the regular functions. So the arrow function actually works like this. So the second one we have is the arrow function, which actually works like let's name equal to, then followed by the parentheses, then followed by the arrow, then followed by the curly brace. So there are a lot of difference and difficulties with these two type of functions that I just show you right here, and that is because you back in EX5 when I was learning JavaScript for a sec, this is what I've been using. I'm really used to it. So the other week I just fire up the online version of my, what's it called, of my W3 school, and I realized that things has really messed up, and they are trying to introduce me to this. So it took me a couple of while to understand this, but yet I do. So arrow function is simple. This is how you're going to do. So let's look onto the log. I am arrow function. Let's do the same thing right here. We are going to have what's called issue with, say, I am regular function. So the difference between these two is that there is no binding of this. So the this keyword, if you notice, I've actually used the this keyword in a kind of example we face while we are building calculator. So the this keyword usually meant to refer to the object that owns it, or that owns it. Yeah, that's how it works in the function, in the regular function. But in arrow function, there is no binding of this. There is no binding of this. So the this actually refers to the objects that call the function. I don't know how to explain this better. It might be sounding really logical. Until we get there, we'll see. So if I should ask this guy to return this, so automatically it's going to return whatsoever object that calls it. It can be an event, it can be a window event, it can be the mouse, it can be anything. But based on this is just going to refer to the instant objects that calls it. So the instant object that calls it, and that is why through the use of this function we can refer to the x.html, which we use if we actually will deal with the example. And if you not know with the example, just fine. Just understand that this really works different. Another difference is there, if you have a single line, you can ask this to really, maybe you have a value right here, then even if you don't have a value, you can decide to just to return. So you can do or you do console.log. That's my bad, don't mind me. Console.log, I am the arrow function now, and it's still going to work even though the syntax really looks wax. So because, sorry for that. So because these actually are based on our arrow function now, so we can remove the curly braces, and that is if whatsoever we want to do is not more than in line. And as a matter of fact, if you have a parameter here for seconds like array, we can even eradicate this and leave it like this, and it's still going to work. This really looks like, oh, what is this, Gabriel? What you trying to do? This is not me, this is JavaScript, and this is how I learned it, and I've been using it for a couple of years now, and it's working for me, really working for me fine. So just wanted to understand the difference with this. So let's call this guy. So I'm just going to create name arrow, so name regular reg like that. So we need to call this guy now. So to call this guy, we need to call name first, name regular, so we'll call it like this, and name arrow, we'll call it like this too. So let's see what to solve. Do I have the parts? Not yet. So let's grab down the part, the full part, refresh it. You can see both of them really works fine. Say I am regular function, say I am arrow function. And now let's go ahead and do something that is very important with this guy. So instead of console.log, the console.log in the browser, instead of putting it let's console.log this instead of using the string. And okay, let's just do it for the arrow function first. And when you realize that I console.log the this is referring, if I put it down here, is referring to the window object that calls it. But on a normal scopes, on a normal file, you can see it's referring to the window object that does calls it. So this here is really not binding itself to the object that owns it, and the object that actually owns it is the arrow, the name arrow. Why is it not just referring to the name arrow? So it really takes us really far away, really far, to put himself or call the object that actually invoke it, that bind it. It does not refer to that, but it refers to the objects that cause it, that invoke it. So this is really nice, because we know that there are some situations whereby we really need to go upstairs rather than the present object that we are with. Another thing is that we've done that really good. Let's do the same thing with this. We really need to let this go, because I don't. Okay, let's just leave it to, it's fine. So if we do this again, you can see this is actually doing the same way, this is doing the same thing, I believe, but this is actually because there are not really lot of our objects that owns it. But to text this out, let's just go ahead and put something on it. So wrap this guys up as an object now, because right now who is calling it, it is the window that is calling there, because we're actually invoking it outside of that. So we need to turn this into some kind of objects now. So arrow function equal to that. So I don't want to do this, so I can actually do this by basics, turning this to objects. Then I'm just going to put name is equals to string of arrow, and then right here I'm going to put the duty, or let me say task. So the task that is going to perform, then we can park this guy. I believe it should be able to sit down there. It's just for issue. Okay, then we can come to the log d. So we need to just do the same thing with this guy, equal to, then put it on objects. So I'm coming with that one later. The name I'm going to say is reg fun. So this is the for regular function. Then I'm just going to put the duty, the task for here too. So I'm just going to grab this guy. So and this is not really making sense anymore, so we need to let now. Come to the new knife, paste this up, then I'm going to put in the function now. Okay, this is fine. Let's just format this very well, because having a clean code is also important. All right, it's clean enough now. So instead of doing this, let's just go ahead and do console.log name reg dot task. Then we can come here to say console.log name arrow dot task. Okay, we are there. Let's refresh this. So dot task, we don't need to really do console.log anymore. I've actually forget that. We can just call them like name ireg dot task, and we can say name arrow dot task. I feel like it should be called like a function, so I know that already. So it should be called like a function now. Let's refresh this, and this is where we are. So I really want to go far to show you the difference between the arrow function and the regular function. So I said the arrow function usually go really deep upward to refer to the object that invoke it. So the regular function usually didn't go much, but refer to the immediate object that invokes it. And this is how I can actually explain it better for you to understand. So if you look at this now, the same thing we do is that we ask them to print this. So this usually we are telling them is that, okay, who calls you, or let me say who's your parents, where do you belong to, and the arrow function go ahead and reply, sorry, the regular functions just go ahead and reply us that, hey Gabriel, the person that actually called me is my object that belongs to, is the little object that it belongs to. You can see truly this is what it belongs to, just the name reg and all. But the arrow function is saying, hey Gabriel, belongs to the window, to everything. So really go really far to do this or perform this task for us. And that is how I wanted to understand that there are very different between these two. So when you things really get messy, there are situations you want to use this, there are situations that you really don't want to use this. So this is why it's very understand. So thank you so much. The next tutorial we're going to be talking about classes.